create something that I could use. Well, to make a long story short, I started to write this program in 2 summer vacations and 2 winter breaks. I created a complete financial planning system and debugged it. And he was delighted with it and still using it today. Inevitably, it occurred to both of us separately, but we got to talking about it. You see, like it so much, maybe, and I go into so much trouble, maybe we should market this to other financial planners. Right? Sounds like a good idea. So this required writing a manual and getting packaging together and marketing materials and so on. We had a coup. We got on the program of a conference of financial planners in Kansas City. It was in August of 1986. Dennis got me on the program to lecture about what's wrong with all the software that does financial planning. But at the end of the lecture, I would say, I can save you. And we rented a suite, we rented some computers, and we had the whole thing set up there so people could experiment with it. Well, we had a problem. A lot of people who call themselves financial planners are really insurance salesmen, real estate agents, or stockbrokers. They call themselves financial planners because they think they get more clients that way. They sound more trustworthy. That was a big problem. I think it was illustrated best by these couple of guys who came in. They were from the one, and they really wanted to sell insurance. And I started to show them the program, and after a few minutes, we cut to the chase and said, look, all I want to know is, will this program tell my clients to buy insurance? I said, well, yeah, I need it. I didn't do quite so bad. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, we calculate their insurance need based on the salary of the wage earner, his age, and dependents, and so on. And if they don't have enough insurance, we'll tell them to buy it. And I said, well, what if they already have enough? I said, well, won't tell them to buy it. In fact, I might even tell them they got too much, and they should cancel it. Oh, yeah. Well, his eyes glazed over. I mean, he was full of his tent right there. He didn't want this. He said, look, I'm going to sell insurance. And my clients won't buy insurance just because I tell them to. But if a computer says they should buy it, they go, that's what I've done. So that wasn't for him. And you know what? I hate to tire the whole industry, but I think they're all almost all crooks and shysters. You know how many of these things we sold? 0. We never sold a single copy of this program because the industry just doesn't want a good, honest financial planning program. Okay. How the time flies. There's still one thing I need to talk about regarding my career in teaching mathematics. Okay, I had decided I wanted to teach. But how am I going to teach? Now, how many of you think that all it takes to be a good teacher is to know the subject? You don't believe it. That's why elementary school teachers who are teaching stuff we all know still have to get credentialed, and you have to go to some training to be a teacher. Now, the odd thing is that in K through 14, we require credentials. But for the university level, the theory is you got a PhD in the field, go in the classroom and teach it. There's no training. You can come out of a PhD program and never having taught a single minute in your life and be hired to teach. Most of us teach in the course of our graduate school just to support ourselves, but it's not required. And in any case, all that does is advance by a couple of years. That moment when you walk into a classroom, you have to teach and you have a clue what you can do. So, well, I mean, and so here I was. Here I am in Tucson, August 1963. I arrived in town. I'm a graduate teaching assistant. They said, okay, look, if you're a graduate student, you know algebra and trig. Here's the book. Here's your roster. You meet over there. Keep in touch. And there was a graduate student advisor, but All he did was, once a semester he came around, sat in for an hour, didn't use any much to say, and he wanted to proofread our exams before we did the game. That was it. That was all it was. I got it from being a teacher. So what am I going to do? And I thought, the obvious thing to do is to think about my own education and pick out the teachers that were good and then imitate them. And that's when I realized that my education in mathematics, from kindergarten through graduate school, had been universally rotten. Not in all fields. I had some good teachers. I mentioned Mr. Weller, and I had a great teacher in Amherst in American intellectual history. But math, almost universally rotten. For instance, Mrs. Igler, third grade, is teaching us fractions. What's a fraction? It's got a number here, and a number down here, and a bar in the middle. I can tell it's a fraction. Oh, and then you have to do arithmetic. Multiply, yeah. That's easy. Divide, you just have to turn the bottom upside down first. Adding and subtracting is a little harder. You have to get involved with these kind of denominators. I stopped that stuff. Remember, this was my goody two-shoes period. I mastered this stuff. I had no clue what it meant. And I don't know what a fraction. I didn't know what a fraction was. I don't know what it really meant. I didn't know what it was good for. I didn't have a clue what it meant to add them and multiply them. What are you doing? 8th grade. End of the year. Teacher gives the class an assignment. And she comes to me and she says, I know you can do this. I want you to do something else. Next year you're going to be taking algebra. I want you to start out with algebra. I want you to find out. I want you to think about what is A plus A. I immediately said, well, you can't add letters. And she said, no. Think about it. I said, there's nothing to think about. You can't add letters. She said, look, I want you to sit there and think about this. I'll check back with you at the end of the week. So I sat there for 45 minutes saying to myself, over and over again, you can't add letters. She came back at the end of the period. She said, well, how did it go? I said, well, second. I said, you can't add letters. I'm so disappointed you didn't figure this out. It's too late. I said, get it? Yes. She said, well, let's see. What's B plus B? I said, 2B. Yes, that's it. How about X plus X? Yes. 2X. Right. You got it. You're going to do great then. Well, I didn't have it at all. All I knew was what to say to please her. Maybe next year it'll get clearer. You know, Mr. Reinhardt, the teacher in that grade out there, hadn't a clue what algebra was either. You know, nobody ever told me what we're doing when we add letters in mathematics. I figured that out for myself when I was a graduate student and I had to teach it. And you know what? I was actually right. You can't add letters. Mathematicians are not adding letters. Letters are there as replacements for generic numbers. If you want to say 15 plus 15 is the same thing as 2 times 15, then think about punching the buttons on your calculator. There's a different sequence of buttons which you can come out with 30. And the same thing is true no matter what number you spend. A mathematician will say that A plus A equals 2. Nobody explained it. Mr. Reinhardt, I figured out. He had it all down, how you solve equations. He was explaining them. You have 5x over here, 3x over here. You take the 3x and put it over here, and put a minus sign and combine it. One of my intrepid classmates raised his hand one day and said, Mr. Reinhardt, can you explain why it is that when you take the 3x from this side of the equation and you put it on that side, it changes its sign? He scratched his head, stroked his chin. Then he said, well, when that 3x tunnels underneath the equals and is out of our sight, due to mysterious forces in this universe of which we have little or no knowledge, any other questions? You know, it's so easy to explain that if you've got equals and you change them in the same way, they're still equal. Do something smart like change them by subtracting 3x from both sides. Nobody ever explained it. 10th grade, fine geometry. Miss Lulu Martin. She is the world's worst at math. Every summer she travels to go someplace in Disney, like Bolivia or Bali or something. And she'd come home with great stories and photographs, and she did wonderful assemblies, assembly presentations for the school. know that. She was horrible mathematician. I had a lot of trouble getting her through the problems. One day we were talking about the Pythagorean theorem. Now I know there's a lot of mathematician folks here, and there's probably some that aren't, but the Pythagorean theorem is a well-known theorem in mathematics, probably the most famous, very important, and there's lots and lots of proofs of it. Now, of course, we don't collect more proofs because we want to be more sure. If you got one proof, it's really a proof. You know it's true. But it's interesting to see other proofs. I once had a calendar, tear off a page a day. Every page had a new proof in the Pythagorean theorem. There's over 400 different proofs now. We didn't get any of them in this class. No, I was too modest to ask questions. But one of my brave colleagues said, "Ms. Martin, how do we know that everything is true?" She gave us this very, very solid scalpel. And she said, "You realize that there are a lot of people who are much smarter than we are who have said it's true, and so we have an obligation to believe it." I'm going to answer any silly questions like that. See what I mean? Rotten education. In the interest of time, I won't bore you with any more stories, but just to say, I didn't have much to work with. Basically, think about what was done to me and don't do that. One exception, and time is flying here, so I'm not going to do the details, but there was one teacher I had in high school, Mr. Edwin Barlow, who taught math and physics. And I liked him. I got along fine. But he was very strict and very formidable, and he terrified a lot of people. Now, I saw through that. I got along with him fine. But people like to say my sister came along several years after the classes was just scared to death of him. I mean, she would have brain freeze when she went in this class. She couldn't do anything. So I thought, well, I'd adopt his stuff. And that was a big mistake because, as I say, it worked for me, but it didn't work for most people. And it was about a couple of decades later when I finally had another role, Clarence Stevens from Potsdam College in New York. And we here at the math department in the state adopted a lot of his methods. Emphasis on group work, our math lab across from the department office, and our board ceremony and so on. There's a lot of his ideas, and I think it's made us a much better, more user-friendly department, and me a much better teacher. Well, gosh, I had some other things I wanted to talk about, like my lifelong Eskimos and my teaching in San Quentin, but it's getting to be 8 o'clock. I think what I'll do at this point is I'll give the audience a chance here to get involved, ask questions, and make comments, and see where we go from here. I think we probably should get out of here by 8:30 at the latest. If you have to leave in the meantime, please feel free. So any questions or comments? Sandra?
I'm really interested in your work at San Quentin. What do you have to encapsulate what you learned from that there?
Okay, I'll talk about that a little bit. By the way, you're in the front row, or any of my colleagues from San Quentin, as well as one of our former students who went to Lowell. San Quentin is a unique prison in the California system in having volunteer programs. There's an education program, which is what I was involved with, but it also has a lot of others. There's alcohol addiction, narcotics addiction, anger management, how to be a better father, yoga and meditation. San Quentin has all this because of a remarkable woman whose name is Judy Woodruff. She was the warden at San Quentin, starting, I think, in the 90s and continuing until 2003. And that was when Schwarzenegger was elected governor. And you may remember that he promised he was going to reform the prisons and really make them rehabilitated. And he did something which really was very wise, which was to take Jeannie Woodford and make her statewide director of prisons so that she could bring these methods to the whole state. Well, unfortunately, he didn't keep his promises to her, didn't provide her the resources that she needed, and 2 years later she quit. Last I heard, she was actively working to overturn the death penalty in California. She had the dubious pleasure of presiding over 4 executions while she was working. And by the way, I'm very pleased to say Jean Woodford's is a graduate of Sonoma State University. She got a degree in criminal justice administration, I think somewhere around 1978 or 9, and she has been designated a distinguished alumna at Sonoma State. Having heard about her work interested me in becoming part of that program. There was one other influence, though, and that was a student that we had here, a student Stratford was his name. He was the student here from 1987 to 1991, remarkable man. He never took a class from me, but I knew him because I was chair of the scholarship committee at the time. And for 3 years in a row, his name bubbled up at the top as the most qualified student. He was active on the campus and told me later, he said, whenever I heard of a vacancy on a board or a committee that was open to a student, I signed up, I jumped in. And to no great surprise, he was the president of the Associated Students in his final year. He had come here straight from San Quentin. He was a prisoner there. He had been in the Vietnam War, and like many servicemen there, he got involved in hard drugs, an addict, and a great deal of difficulty, as many others did, reintegrating into American society. They came home, so there was a lot of trouble with the few in prison. But he had an epiphany one day, about 1986, when he was in prison, and he said, well, yes, a lot of people have done a lot of bad things to me, the system has screwed me, but what's the point of just sitting here and hating everybody and stewing about it for the rest of my life? I need to take charge and turn things around. That's when he decided he was going to go to college. And he applied to Sonoma State. Sonoma State being the college it is, or it was then, we accepted him. I was, for many years, the host and chair of the War and Peace Lecture Series. And because of his interesting experiences in the Vietnam War, we brought him in as a speaker. In fact, he always concluded the series. And he gave a really knock-your-socks-off lecture. That, of course, is still going, although I understand it's been put on hiatus for the fall. It's coming fall. I hope it's reinstated. I think it's a very important course. And any students here are interested in it, I strongly recommend it to you. It's a full course, one of the most influential and transformative courses you can take. But it was a lecture that Steve gave to the criminal justice people that I'm interested in. He contrasted San Quentin and Sonoma State, 2 state institutions, just 30 minutes apart on the freeway, but as different as night and day, or as equal as heaven and hell. San Quentin was a very dark place. We were spiraling down into this black pit. Devil take the hindmost, beggar your neighbor. Any other cliches? Nobody cared about it. Even the people who were paid to care didn't care. He came up here and all was light. People helping him. And some of them were helping him, were paid to help him, and some people helped him and they weren't paid. What a contrast. So, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, maybe someday I could go down to San Quentin and bring some of our light to that darkness there. But I think it was the fact that one of our graduates, there was a student at the time who was doing an internship for a sociology GE class, and he was working in the study hall and invited me to come along with him, and I got hooked. It's a very, very interesting experience to teach at San Quentin. They're the most dedicated students I've ever had. Not the strongest necessarily, but they're very dedicated because they're self-selected out of the prison population. So they come there because they decided that there was something dysfunctional about their lives that got them in trouble in the first place and they need to do something. And said too that, sure, we go there to teach mathematics, and we do, but just our presence there is important. Because it's just a signal to them that not everybody is just thrown into prison and forgotten about. We run our classrooms just as though we're not in prison. So for a few hours they can make sure that the walls are still there and they're still wearing the uniforms and so on, but they're treated as students. They treat each other as students. And so I think it can be said that we help our students keep in touch with their humanity. And one of the benefits of teaching there, I think, is that you get to see the California criminal justice system from the inside. And you find out there's a lot of myths. I think most Californians and even Americans generally think that all prisoners are Charles Mansons or Richard Allen Davises. Now, there are prisoners that are like that. I don't know what percentage. Steve Stratford estimated 25%. They're psychopaths. They don't really care about anybody. It's a good thing that they're in prisons. Society's better off. You can't put people in jail for a crime they might have committed. But if they've already committed one, you can use all legal resources possible to keep them in and keep them on the streets. There's another group of people who are in prison who really shouldn't be in prison. They should be in mental hospitals. They've got mental difficulties, and they can be treated if they're in hospitals. They're not getting treatment in prison. There's another group of people